Good evening, everybody. I know you were expecting to see Sean's face, and hopefully you will see Sean's face very soon. There he is. I'm inviting him onto the screen right now. So my name is Claire. I'm the event coordinator for Village Books and Paper Dreams in Bellingham and Linden, Washington. We're so glad that you could join us this evening. Hopefully Sean is going to appear here any second. The wonders of technology. I love it. As I would normally do, I want to make some announcements about Crowdcast and about an event that's coming up. If you look in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you will see a green button that says follow. If you click on that, you'll get to see events that we have coming down the road. We have a lot of events headed our way. We're not letting a little thing like a pandemic slow us down. So click on follow and you'll see what we have coming up. Speaking of what's coming up, tomorrow we have a very special event for any fans of historical fiction in the house. We are pleased to welcome back Ashley Sweeney. She wrote the best-selling novel Eliza Waite. Answer Creek is her latest historical fiction novel. She is going to be here tomorrow night. That's Thursday at 7 p.m. She's going to be in conversation with fellow author Julie Christine Johnson, and we are very excited. It's her final event of her virtual tour for her brand new book, and so we hope you'll join us for that. To those of you who kicked in a few dollars at registration for this event, we really do appreciate it. Happily, our events are still free, and we're glad that we can provide that service. But it is nice to those of you who kicked in a couple dollars to support our programming. We really do appreciate it. Let's see. We're going to keep the chat enabled on the right-hand side of the screen, and we do encourage engagement. The author would love it if you are typing in comments, questions as she does her presentation. So we're going to keep that enabled through the event tonight. I do want to remind you that our virtual readings gallery is a safe space. Any user exhibiting offensive, hateful, or inappropriate behavior will be dismissed from the event immediately. And lastly, the most important button on this screen is this green one right here that says purchase all we buried here. If you click on that button, you will go straight to the Village Books website where you can purchase our featured author's book, All We Buried. And there's Sean. I see him.
Hey,
yay, he made
Sean.
it. Okay, and with that.
God.
Oh, Sean, I'm so sorry.
Jeez.
Deep breath. Deep breath.
Yes. Oh. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to, because Sean, I know that you were probably prepared to introduce our guests. How about if I'm going to make us all here equal on the screen? So Sean, how are you? You made it.
Hi, I'm here. So I'm excited to be here. I'm really pleased to be here. And wow, I've been frantically trying to get things to run here at my home office. And so of all the times, because yeah. Okay, I'm here.
Maybe I should introduce myself, Sean. You should just sit back.
No, I'll be okay. I have to say a couple of things to the crowd. Welcome everybody who is here. I'm thrilled that there are so many of you wanting to be here tonight. First thing up, we have traditionally had a Christmas party where Whatcom Writers and Publishers provides appetizers for you, like the big onion rings and the breaded mushrooms at Nikki's. And you know what we're going to do instead of that next month? Nothing. We're going to have a regular you can always count on me to be a source of disappointment.
No.
Thank God, not always. So we are going to have a regular meeting in December. Janet Oakley has acquired a speaker for us, and I haven't heard from her yet to know who this is. I just know that there is one in place. So show up for the regular December meeting. It'll be very exciting. and there's still no timeline on when we will be going back to having meetings in person. I suspect we will all be vaccinated when that happens. Grateful again, as always, to Village Books. I have not had any beverage that could be impairing my. It's pure stress. Pure stress of sitting here. I thought, can I do this on my phone and just, golly.
So sorry.
And my phones must be glitching because I see you called me and I didn't have any kind of information about that. I was just all right. So, if you have any, yeah, I'm here, Aaron. I made it. If any of you have exciting news that you want me to mention, announcements about books coming out, or if you've just set up shop as hi Luca, onion rings and workshops. Yeah, love more information. Well, we are a clearinghouse for some information on things like where you can get materials edited, how to deal with agents, publishers, things of that nature. We tend to be sort of for mid-level people who have gotten a book written and are on their way to the next step. But we also nurture people who are just getting going, who are looking for writing groups. Village Books is the place that I send people for starters to try to find writing groups and critique groups. So they're a great resource for all of that. But we typically have speakers on a broad range of topics. And we're also closely linked with the Chanticleer book conference, authors conference, which will occur.
Uh-oh. Lost Sean. So I think I should just launch in. And
Okay,
if he comes
so
back.
I have a little intro here for you.
Sure.
So, is your name pronounced Elena or Elena or
Elena?
Elena.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
so Elena Taylor's first mystery series, The Eddie Shoes Mysteries, written under the name Elena Hartwell, introduced a quirky mother-daughter crime-fighting duo. With her latest, All We Buried, Elena brings the readers to a much more serious and atmospheric novel. Located in her beloved Washington state, Elena uses her connection to the environment to produce a forbidding story of small-town secrets and things that won't stay buried. So I am anxious to hear about everything that you're going to talk about with our audience tonight. And so I'm going to get out of the way. And since we did get a late start, Elena, please feel free to of course, take the time that you need.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful.
All right.
Okay. I'll just talk really fast. I've had coffee all day, so I'll just talk really fast.
Okay. I'm going to make myself little. Have
Okay,
fun.
fantastic. Thank you. So I also am going to admit to you that I forgot that this was crowdcast and not Zoom. I Zoom on a regular basis and have a virtual background. And I popped up today. I was slightly horrified at my background. So my apologies for the fact that my office is a big hot mess, but I covered up the most of it. So happy to be here with all of you. So to give you a little bit more background, in addition to being a novelist, I'm also a developmental editor. I'm a senior editor with Allegory Editing, which is a boutique editing company. And as a developmental editor, what I do is work one-on-one with authors on manuscripts. Typically, the author has finished a completed manuscript, maybe has done multiple rewrites, potentially has worked with beta readers, but they're coming to me to work on a developmental level, meaning big picture. So I'm looking at everything from story structure, character development, pace, dialogue, sort of all of the really big picture stuff, as opposed to proofreader. I'm not a proofreader. I'm also a developmental editor. So as Claire mentioned, I am happy to answer questions as we go along. So I will monitor the chat window. If you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the chat window and I'll address them as we go. So what I would like to talk about tonight is one of the issues that I see over and over and over again, working with writers with manuscripts as a place that a little bit of craft, a little bit of attention would just really bump those manuscripts up to a higher level and make them really pop out to agents, to editors, and give them a much more likely chance of professional representation. And that is the issues of objectives, obstacles, and stakes. And it's one of those things where it is simple conceptually and incredibly challenging to implement. Okay. Part of why this is one of my favorite topics is it's something that I have to fix in my manuscripts. And as mentioned in my intro, I have 3 books out in my first series, and 1 book out and a second finished in my second series. So I'm on my 5th book, well, 5th published book, right? We've all got those ones in the drawer. And I'm still always looking at this particular topic. So objectives, obstacles, and stakes. So first I want to start off to just make sure we're all sort of speaking the same language. When I talk about those, what does that mean? An objective is what a character is after. And one of the most important parts thinking about an objective is to know that there are 2 ways that we use objectives in a manuscript. And the first is an objective in a scene or in a chapter or in a section where a character is going after something. And the other way that we talk about it is a super objective. And the super objective is that one single, really big goal that is propelling your protagonist through the entire book. A lot of times we think, oh, but wait, you can't have just one super objective. There's so many things going on in the book. Well, hopefully by the end of our conversation tonight, you're going to really see how having one single super objective actually strengthens your manuscript. It's going to make it a stronger story. It's going to make your action more engaging. And it's going to be a book that people are going to relate to your characters more. So objectives, what the character is after. Super objective, what the character is after for the entire stretch of the manuscript, not just a particular scene. An obstacle, just like it sounds, right? Anything that's in the way. That could be internal, that could be external. And maybe most importantly, stakes. Why does it matter, right? You can have strong goals and you can have stuff in the way, but if the stakes aren't there, we don't care whether or not those goals are achieved as readers, right? So those are the 3 things that I want to talk about. These 3 things drive everything, whether you're talking about fiction, narrative, nonfiction, or memoir. Whatever story you're telling, true, based on true, a nonfiction narrative where it's a true story that you're relating, or even a memoir, you're going to have a single super objective. And throughout it, all of the driving narrative thread is coming from your character having objectives, obstacles, and stakes, which are clear. They are clear to you. They aren't always clear to your character, but you and your reader are seeing what characters are going after. So how can that possibly work in fiction, narrative, nonfiction, and memoir? So let me talk a little bit about that. So in fiction, there is a central driving narrative thread. I'm going to say that one more time. There is a central driving narrative thread in fiction. It's a trail of events leading one from another, and that they occur because your protagonist has a super objective. So event linked to event, linked to event. Action by your protagonist, reaction by the world that they're in, action in reaction to that, action in reaction to that. It's a chain series of events driven by your protagonist as they go after the super objective for the course of the novel. Okay? Your character may not know what their super objective is at the beginning of the novel. They may think they're after something else. They may be avoiding. They may be working really hard. We've all heard that reluctant hero. They may be working very hard against that super objective. But by the end of the book, you, your reader, and your characters all know what they're going after. Okay? So that's that central driving force. Narrative nonfiction, even though events are true, the people that you're writing about still have a clear objective for an event, for something they're going after, for something that they're doing, for something they've achieved. That's why you're writing their story, right? We're not interested in real people that don't go after something, right? That's why we're reading these narrative nonfiction. We want to see what this person can achieve, what this person can gain, what this person can get. And so narrative nonfiction is structured very similar to fiction, in that it needs to have that single driving force. Memoir. I work with a lot of memoirists. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see over and over and over again is that people writing memoir sometimes confuse autobiography and memoir. A lot of times what I will get are often very well written, right? This isn't about ability to write. This is about craft. I often get these memoirs, which are very well written, but it's a series of events that happened in someone's life. There's no arc. There's no through line. There's no single objective. Memoir is about a chunk of time in a person's life. It's about enduring a tragedy. It's about getting through a particular challenge. That's what makes it memoir as opposed to autobiography. So just like fiction, in your memoir, you've got a goal that you were working towards. And that super objective is what drives all the scenes. So I hope that that makes sense to all of you, how I'm breaking that down. Feel free to, even if you don't have questions, I'd love to know what all of you are writing, because I can address if you have specifics, whether it's science fiction or memoir, or you're doing some sort of narrative nonfiction. I'd love to know what you're writing. Feel free to pop that into the chat window. So then the question becomes, what happens when a character does or doesn't achieve a goal? And this is how we can determine if what we're writing is a comedy, a tragedy, a happy ending, sad ending, right? If a character gets what they want and it's a good thing, you have an upbeat, happy ending. If they want it and don't get it, we have a sad ending. If they want it and they get it and it turns out to be bad, now you have a tragedy. Right? So the type of book that we're writing, regardless of genre, can be determined in part by what happens if they do or do not achieve these goals. You also have the option of they get it, they want it, they get it, they realize it was the wrong thing. They ended up with the wrong person, they ended up with the wrong career, whatever. They realize that. And in the final moment, in the climax of the book, they have a realization of what they really were after. Oftentimes, the readers have known that all along, but the character has to come to the realization, oh, I didn't want to marry A, I wanted to marry B. And the end, they get what they actually have been after throughout the entire scope of the story. And again, we have a happy ending. So the way that our book is going to come out can really be impacted by what the goals are they achieved? And if they are, how does that manifest for the life of the character? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Okay. As I said before, this is one of the single biggest issues that I see, and it manifests in a couple of different ways. One is that there will be scenes, they may, again, be very well written. This isn't about your ability to write. They may be wonderful scenes. It could be the best scene in the book. But if it does not relate in any way to that super objective, it doesn't further the story. One of the things I'm often writing as I'm doing notes on a particular manuscript is going to be, doesn't move the story forward. This does not move the story forward. This does not move the story forward. It doesn't matter how well written it is. Audiences and readers, we don't want to go off on a tangent. We're okay with red herrings. We're okay with a character misunderstanding a situation, going after the wrong thing, having something in error, being misunderstood. But what we don't want is to have a scene which isn't actually pushing our protagonist towards a goal. That's problematic. We'll lose interest because we're not moving towards something. One of the ways to think about this is that readers engage with characters not because they're likable or not. All right, that's a myth. It isn't just about being likable. We engage with characters because they want something. If you've got 4 characters and 3 of them are, people you'd hang out with at the bar, they're nice, they're funny, and you'd like, I would hang out with that person. And then you have somebody who is just awful. They're a villain, but they have a driving force that they want something and they're going after it. We're going to side with the villain. And that's why villains can be incredibly provocative and why they can be favorite characters. And that's because they've been given the strongest super objective in a work. And so again, we engage with yes. Do we need to have somebody that we're pulling for, that we're rooting for? Yes. Do a lot of us prefer the characters that we're rooting for to have something about them that we like? Sure. But it's not required. What's required is that protagonist, that main character wants something and they go after it. And that's what makes us engage with them, because we're rooting for them. Even if we feel bad about it because they're the villain, we still find ourselves going, I almost sort of hope that he wins, even though he's the bad guy, because he's the one that's trying the hardest. So it's very, very, very important that we have all of those things clear. And that there are obstacles in the way of those objectives. All right. So you might have a very, very clear objective for your character. You might know exactly what you want them. They know what they're after. They've got a clear path forward and they go after it and they get it. Well, here's why that doesn't engage. We want to see characters earn their goal. We have to earn what we get in life. We want to see the characters have to earn it. And in fact, we want to see them have to work even harder than we ever have, right? We pull for underdogs. We pull for those characters that really have to overcome things. So those obstacles have got to be big. We want to see the struggle. Drama comes from conflict. Conflict comes when a character wants something and something or someone else stands in the way. That conflict is what drives action and drives a narrative arc. And keep in mind that conflict and fighting are 2 different things. So don't confuse big action with conflict. You can have very quiet conflict. If you have 2 characters sitting in a room and they are lovers and they have had a devastating fight and they never speak, that's going to have way more tension than 2 people we don't care about shooting it out in an alley, right? So don't confuse conflict with fighting, okay? 2 separate things. Conflict really truly is about a character having an objective and something big is standing in the way and that there are stakes to it. That's how we build conflict. And drama is conflict. Without conflict, our readers are going to stop reading because they're not being drawn along through the action. The bigger the struggle, the more that we as readers connect. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what obstacles can be. Obstacles can be physical, emotional, or psychological. It could be other people, could be standing in the way. And remember too that when we talk about an antagonist, right? So you have your protagonist, your main character who's driving the narrative action. And then you have these people that are interfering with them. They don't have to be a bad guy. An antagonist might simply want something else for your protagonist. They may not be out to kill them or undermine them. They may simply have a different goal. One of the examples that I like to use for this is you think about a mother and their child. Child's 18. Mom has been a good mom, done a good job raising this child. Mom wants the kid to go to college. Kid wants to travel the world for a year. No, this is not in a pandemic, okay? We're going to take the pandemic off the table for this example. Kid wants to see the world, right? That's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a strong goal. It has a lot of value. Mom wants the kid to go to college. It's a good thing. That's a strong goal, right? Has a lot of value. So this character is faced with the conflict, not of good and bad, but of good and good. Okay, and the mother in the part of being the antagonist here, of wanting this child to do something else, is not an evil character. She's simply an obstacle to the protagonist getting what they want, right? And we could even flip it. If mom's the antagonist, or excuse me, if mom is the protagonist and the kid's going off to college, right? The obstacle to her happiness is the child going off to college. So in that scenario, your protagonist could be either character. They're not a villain, they're not a bad guy, but their goals are in conflict with each other. Okay, so it's very important that our other characters, our secondary characters, our antagonists, their goals are in opposition to that of our main character. Opposition creates conflict. Obstacles can be a character's own fears, right? These are huge, right? How many of us, our lives are impacted by fear, often of the things that we want the most, right? It can stop us from sending out that query letter. It can stop us from going to that writer's conference and going up and meeting an agent. Well, what if they don't like my work? Well, 9 out of 10 won't, but you only need one that does. So it can be the fear of your character, can be a obstacle. It can be a health problem, an impediment, a fragility. It can be financial. It can be distance. They're trying to overcome something, which is a long ways away. It can be acceptance from a community. We see a lot of stories where a character is facing prejudice, or is facing something else in their community that they have to overcome if their goal is to be a part of the community that they live in. So their obstacle may be prejudice. Their obstacle may be that they look or act or do something different than everyone else in their community. That functions as an actual obstacle. So there are lots of different ways to think about obstacles: physical, emotional, psychological. And obviously, the more that you throw at your character, the more they have to struggle, the more readers are going to engage and want them to win their super objective. And again, I want to reiterate how important stakes are. None of this matters if the outcome is meaningless. Okay, so stakes can also be physical, emotional, and psychological. So, for example, a stake could be poverty. Your character may be working towards getting out of poverty, and so the stake is living in poverty or not. Those are huge stakes that people can understand. It could be love, getting love, giving love, and that could be platonic, it could be fraternal, it could be paternal or maternal, or it could be romantic, right? That's a huge stake. And something that we see in particular genres. Romance is all about, do they achieve that love or not? That's the stake. And we all know, because we are we require human interaction, that's also kind of life and death, right? We're all struggling right now with the fact that we are so isolated. We all know how hard that is, to be isolated. And so we can truly understand a character who's trying to overcome isolation. It could be physical death, right? I write crime fiction, so I often put my characters in situations where they could die. And so that's a huge stake, right? It could be the survival of a community. You could have a character who is trying to protect the world that they live in some way, whether it's a household, a family, a neighborhood, a town, a country, a world. If you're writing sci-fi, right? The life and the survival of the entire planet could be at stake. Failure could be at stake. Failure at a career, failure at an education, failure as a parent, failure as a sibling. Failure could be at stake. And remember, too, that just like there are multiple obstacles, there can be multiple stakes. Poverty could also impact failure of a career, right? So these things can work in an interchange. So how does the plot and the character goals interact? Because these things are inextricably tied. You can't really have a good, solid plot if you don't also have these clear objectives, obstacles, and stakes. You're going to have a slightly rambling story. And as I mentioned, that I often see with memoir is sort of vignettes that are put together, and there's no sort of common thread. That's very problematic. So how does the plot and character goals interact? The first thing I want to make sure that we're all clear on is that the protagonist drives the story. That means the protagonist is doing things. They are active characters. I often read really good writers, right, who have sort of interesting characters and good dialogue, and they know all that back. They know all that about. But everything happens to them. And that is very unsatisfying. We don't want to watch a character over and over and over again have something happening to them. We don't care if they make the right choice. We don't care if they do something. In fact, it's very enjoyable to watch a character make a mistake and get back up, and make a mistake and get back up, and make a mistake and get back up, right? Fighting and fighting and fighting until they ultimately figure out what their true goal is. That's fine. What we don't want to see is a character where things are happening to them. And I'm surprised at how often I see this, and I've done it myself in early drafts of my own work, where you're going, wow, this character's got a lot of stuff being thrown at them, but they're not driving the action. They're just simply reacting to things that are happening to them. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that your character is driving the action, and that includes if you are doing memoir. And I see a little note from Caleb that he's been plugging away on a memoir about being a wildland firefighter during COVID. Wow, talk about fraught with objectives, obstacles, and stakes, right? I mean, you're protecting a good community, you're protecting the fellow firefighters, you're protecting yourself. You have all of these obstacles, not just the fire itself, right? We've had some horrific fires this year, but also how do you balance all of that out with this obstacle of COVID, right? That's huge. And the stakes are phenomenal in that particular scenario. And so here we have a memoir that's a very clear cut, the super objective, whether it's, putting out a particular fire, surviving the season, getting all of your fellow firefighters through, whatever that super objective is, there's huge obstacles and stakes that are going to be following along with that. But what's most important is that the character, whether it's fiction or it's you writing memoir or it's you talking about a character in narrative nonfiction, that's the person who is driving the action. Things do happen to them, but bulk of the time they are acting in the world and then having to react to how the world is impacted by the choices that they make. So make sure that if it's memoir, you're the one driving the action. Otherwise, you're not telling a memoir, you're telling someone else's story. Okay. So the protagonist has to drive the story. Each event that you choose to put in the manuscript is pushing your character towards the super objective. Okay? The events all relate to this bigger picture. Otherwise, that scene doesn't belong in your book. One of the ways that I like to talk about the difference between plot and story, I think, is a really important distinction to try to understand all of this. And story is the big picture. It's everything. It's all the stuff that happened before the book started. It's all the stuff that happens during the span of time that the book's set in, and even leading on into the future of what's going to happen next. That's story, right? So if we're talking about my story, I was born in one year, and all of these years that happened, and then this moment right now when I'm talking to you, right? And then I'm going to go on, and we can all imagine me sitting back down and working on my next book, right? That's story. Plot are the events that make it to the page. Okay? Story is the big picture. Plot is solely the events that make it to the page. And each one of those events is related to the super objective. It may be that the character is moving away from their super objective because they've made a bad choice, right? They're gone after the wrong person. They're pursuing the wrong career. They've gone down a red herring trying to find the killer if they're a detective, right? But they're trying to get to the end of their super objective. And every event has to be focused towards that super objective. So the scenes are exploring what the character ultimately wants. The scenes are exploring what those obstacles are. The scenes, the actions in your narrative are looking at what are the stakes here. They're outlining for us, the reader, this is what we're going after. This is what's in the way, and this is what's going to happen if we don't get it. So that's what every scene is about. The climax is the point of the story when the goals are the clearest, the obstacles are the biggest, and the stakes are the highest. I'm going to say that a second time because I think this is a very important aspect of talking about objectives. The climax is the point in the story where the goals are the clearest. Character finally realizes what they're really after. The audience, the readers all go, oh, that's the goal here. This is what we're really after, right? And the obstacles are the biggest. We're overcoming that fear in that moment. We're overcoming that biggest obstacle that's standing in our way. We're getting the other characters on our side. We're overcoming our anxiety about something. We're going to win this fight, right? That's what happens in the climax. And the stakes are the highest. Your character is saying, I am putting it all on the line right here, right now, live or die. That's your climactic moment. It's that moment when all these things are coming very clear and start to coalesce. And again, for those of you writing memoir, it's your point where your goals are the highest in this moment. It's where your goal is clear. It's where those obstacles are big, but you're like, I have to go for this, even though the stakes are so high. And you have a clear way forward. So it's the point where the protagonist fully commits and they're going to succeed or fail. And again, that comes back to, is this a happy story or a sad story? Right? Is this a tragedy? They succeed and find out it's not what they wanted. That's a tragedy. Okay? So that's what you want to think about. So plot is basically a series of objectives that the protagonists and the other characters are after. And again, we've got this conflict going on where different characters are after goals that are in opposition. Okay. For example, you could have a character who's on a particular track in their career and they want to be on this track and their boss wants them to be on this track. And both of them would give them higher salary and more interesting work. And there's something good about moving up these two ladders, but they're in opposition to each other. The character cannot have both. So the conflict comes from which choice are they going to achieve? Are they going to go after theirs, or is the boss right and they need to be going after this one? Or is there a third idea that nobody's thought about yet that we're then going to come to in the climax? So it's basically the characters are running after, running from, fighting against, or facing those obstacles, right? Let me say that again. Our protagonist and the other characters are running after, running from, fighting against, or facing obstacles. That's what's creating all of this conflict. And each time it happens, it launches into a new objective. So if we go back to our firefighter's fighting a big fire, right? But there's all these little fires in the way. So you fight a fire, you put that fire out. Great, but we're not done. That leads us to the next scenario. Maybe in the next fire, there's a house in danger. Okay, now the stakes are up, right? It's a little bit more serious. Start fighting that particular fire. Then you find out halfway through, there's someone in the house. Okay, this action of wanting to put the fire out at the house has just bumped up to a whole other level, because in that action, we have discovered a whole new objective. Got to get the person out of the house. Okay, so this is event to event to event to event that's pushing us towards this resolution of this larger super objective. Okay, as I mentioned, it's kind of a simple theory, right? Character wants something, something's in the way, and there's stakes. So why is it so hard to get this right? And it is. It's challenging. And there's a number of reasons for that. We may not be clear as we're working on our drafts what these super objectives are. If we don't know what these super objectives are, how can we get our characters to decide on the best actions that's going to move in that direction? So then we can start thinking about, all right, if I've got this theory, if I understand this about these objectives, obstacles, and stakes, at what point do I start applying that to the material that I'm working on, to my current manuscript? And I'm going to say throughout. Lots of different ways that we can apply this particular concept to the process that we're in. There are people who tend to outline, right? And they spend a whole lot of time and energy on creating a really solid, very structured outline that's showing them what their character is going to do and all of the actions, and they're figuring out objectives, obstacles, and stakes for this outline. I know writers who, for a full-length book, will have an 80-page outline, and they might spend 6 months working on this outline, and then they sit down and they draft the rest of their book. And 6 months later, they've spent a year, and they have a solid first draft. I don't write that way. I think it's cool, but I don't write that way. I am what I call an organic writer. I absolutely hate the term pantser. I think it's disrespectful for those of us who don't outline, because we don't write by the seat of our pants. We just simply work out those details in scenes on the page, as opposed to creating an outline. So for someone like myself who writes organically, I'll spend my first 6 months writing this hot, ugly mess, right, where characters are doing all kinds of weird things and they don't really connect and scenes are missing and it's kind of a mess. Then I'll spend the next 6 months polishing that, figuring out what my objectives and super objectives are. At the end of the year, I have a fairly finished draft. Same amount of time, right? We've spent the same amount of time. We just have had a different process. So for those of you who outline, that might be a place where you start to really say, okay, what's the super objective? Maybe that's where you start from. This is what my character ultimately wants. What are the things that they do where they're fighting towards it, or where they're fighting against it, or where they're making bad choices that's leading them further and further astray? And you're going to work all of those details out in the outline, so that when you go to sit down, your very first solid draft has got all that worked out. Or if you're like me and you sit down and you work out on the page and you end up with this hot mess, which is where I'm at right now with a new book, and you go, oh, okay, now that I have all these scenes and stuff happening and I kind of have a sense who the characters are, now I'm going to sit back and go, oh, what are they really after? What is the super objective here? And then I'm going to start carving and shaping. I'm going to cut scenes that don't fit. I'm going to modify scenes so that they're pushing the character towards that super objective. And I'm going to reshape the manuscript during these subsequent drafts. So you can have it during your outline. You can have it while you're muddling through a first draft. You can start applying it as you're rewriting. So for those of you who write messy like me, don't worry. You can always go back and add in structure after you've got that first draft. Most writers are going to continue figuring out ultimately what their manuscript is about as they go, and it's going to modify. You may think you know when you start out, whether it's an outline or a first draft, you may think, oh, I know exactly what this character's after. And then as you get in and start to write scenes, keep yourself really open to saying, oh, I'm wrong. Like, that's not what's been driving this character. I need to go back and rewrite these scenes to have a different kind of outcome. And that's really okay. And you may be multiple rewrites while you're sorting this out. Can also help you get over sticky places. So I have a theory that there's no such thing as writer's block. All right, I think that doesn't exist. I think what we call writer's block are situations where the writer has not given themselves enough time to really think through who their characters are and what they want. So if you find yourself sitting at the computer at the blank page and nothing's coming, rather than forcing yourself to put words on the page, consider instead to sit or, take a walk, hop on the treadmill, whatever it is that allows you to really think things through. Yeah, right? No such thing as writer's block. It's totally revolutionary. I believe it. I truly believe it. Give yourself the time to honor that mulling period, right? We all need to mull over stuff and really think about, well, wait a minute. What is my character after? It doesn't even have to be the super objective. It could simply be, I'm in this scene with my character and the secondary character. What is it that they're after here? What is it that they want? What tact have they not taken yet to try to change this person's mind or whatever it is that they're after. And give yourself a little bit of time to say, oh, what's driving them and what's in the way, right? What is the obstacle that they have to overcome? And don't let them get overcome too easily. They have to try a couple different things. They might try talking it out. That doesn't work. They're going to try cajoling. That doesn't work. They're going to try threatening. That doesn't work, right? Let them try all these different ideas about how to overcome that objective. I think when people feel stuck, it's because they don't know what the character's after. If you know what your character's after, you know what's going to be the next scene, right? It's coming from reaction to what just happened before. So they've done something, they've acted in a certain way because they want something. They don't get it because we're not at the end of the book yet. All right, what are they going to try next? Right? Now, simultaneously, all your other characters are doing the exact same thing. All of your characters are after something. So your antagonist, antagonist is after the same thing. They're after their objective. And that is getting in the way of what your protagonist wants. And so they are in opposition to each other. And your protagonist is always then having to re-engage and shift gears based on what other people are doing as well. So don't forget that, we are all the hero of our own story. So your antagonist is also doing things often off the page because they're not the main character, but they're going to come back in having done something else. And it's going to change how your protagonist is going to react. Okay, so a couple of things to help you determine the super objective. I'm going to give you a couple of ways. I'm going to have a sip of water. A couple of ways to help you identify what is the super objective of the story. And this is true for memoir as well, because you have to remember, why are you telling a particular story out of your life? You have a reason for that. There's a goal there, okay? And so you have to identify this central conflict even in a memoir, even in narrative nonfiction. You could be telling an event that's true and that happened, but you're not simply doing a historical, description of everything that happened. You're going to take a very specific point of view. You're going to take very specific parts of an action that you're going to include. So for you to figure out your plot points, you have to figure out, well, what is the central conflict of the story that I'm telling, even if it's a true event? Because you have to decide what events to leave in and what events to leave out. So I have 3 ways for you guys to think about this: the through line, the spine, and the big question. These are the 3 ways that I think it can be really useful to think about what's the driving narrative of your story: the through line, the spine, or the big question. They're all sort of doing the same thing, but seen from a slightly different perspective. So each one of these may work slightly better for you as how to get into and understand the story that you're telling. So through line, think of that as the common thread. All right. Jane Doe is lost in the wilderness. That's your through line. Jane Doe is lost in the wilderness. She is your protagonist, and every scene is about her being lost in the wilderness, trying to find her way home. Every scene is going to relate to that in some way. Even if she's thinking about some event that happened in the past, it relates in some way to why she's lost in the wilderness and how it's going to help her get out, right? Talk about a metaphor, right? We've all been lost in the wilderness, okay? So that's a through line. It's this common thread. Every scene is going to relate to that. If we wanted to think about it in a slightly different way and talk about that same scenario as the spine would be what all of your scenes connect to. It's this scaffolding which the scenes are attached onto that connects them together. So that might be phrased, how Jane Doe survives being lost in the wilderness. Same concept, but looking at it in a slightly different way. So our through line is Jane Doe being lost in the wilderness. Our spine, all the scenes rest on how Jane survives being lost in the wilderness. So tweaking just a little bit can help us think about our story in a slightly different way. If we think about it as the big question, and I love this for story structure, If we think about it instead as the big question, it's what question gets asked at the beginning of the story, which is answered at the end, right? That would be the big question for the book. So for our scenario, it would be, can Jane Doe survive being lost in the wilderness? All right, this is all the same story, okay? This is all the same story. Jane Doe is lost in the wilderness. How Jane Doe survives being lost in the wilderness. Can Jane Doe survive being lost in the wilderness? But it's a slightly different way for you as the writer to find your way in, to look at what the super objectives are. So in our first example, Jane Doe is lost in the wilderness. Well, what's our super objective? Finding our way out, right? Our super objective is Jane Doe wants to find her way out. Boom, super objective. Every scene in our manuscript is going to answer that question. It's going to respond to that particular super objective. It's going to push her towards finding her way out. If we think about it from the spine, how Jane Doe survives being lost in the wilderness, our super objective may be Jane Doe can she find the internal strength to survive? That's a slightly different book, right? If what we're thinking about is her super objective is that she is capable of surviving, I've shifted a little bit about the kind of story I'm going to tell. If in my first one, my super objective is pure survival, right? I'm writing this adventure story. It's pure survival. What can she do? What can she MacGyver out in the wilderness to help her survive? If instead I'm thinking in, how she survives, what is an internal strength that she has to find for herself to help her survive? That's a different super objective. I'm going to tell a different story, right? With that particular way of thinking. And with our question, can Jane Doe survive being lost in the wilderness? Every scene. Will she, won't she? Will she, won't she? Right? So again, these three things can help you identify what is that central conflict, what is that through line. And by understanding that, you can translate it through to say, here's my super objective. This is what's going to drive my character through the entire thing. So super objective for our story, maybe it's Jane wants to live. Lots of different ways how that particular super objective could change. What if she went to the wilderness to commit suicide, gets lost, and then realizes she doesn't want to die? That's huge, right? What if the situation is that Jane has gone up and had a fight with her boyfriend and he turns out to be violent, so she runs away from him, gets lost in the forest? Very different story. She wants to live, but now she's got to overcome both being lost in the wilderness and this crazy guy who's after her, right? So, super objective. Jane wants to live. Obstacles for our scenario. Everything's trying to kill her. It's cold. It's going to snow. There's a fire. She falls into a ravine. She doesn't have any food. There's wild animals. There's so many obstacles. But it's also her internal stakes. Right? What kind of fortitude does she have? How much common sense does she have? Is she practical and pragmatic? Or she's always been sort of flighty and now she's going to have to sort of get serious to survive this. And the stakes are huge. She could die, right? So we're talking about tremendous stakes. But I want to talk about another example, which is, and I'm almost wrapping up, so we won't be too far over. I want to give you another example because, as I mentioned before, action, right, and conflict doesn't have to be a battle. Doesn't have to be a gun battle. It doesn't even have to be Jane Doe lost in the wilderness, right? You could have a very psychological event, which is going to have clear super objectives and equally high obstacles and stakes, even though the person isn't physically in danger. So I want to give you another example. So think of this as a through line or a common thread. Jane Doe wants to be successful as a mother and a career woman. Okay, so here's the through line. She wants to be successful in both. That's the through line here. And all the scenes are back and forth. Career, no motherhood. Career, no motherhood. Career, no motherhood. There's no gun battles in here. Well, maybe she's a spy, but we're going to say that she's not that kind of career. But, you know, these are quiet scenes. She wants to be a good mom. She wants to be successful in her career. It doesn't have to be action in the sense of a car chase. It can be simply interactions between people. So a spine for that particular scenario might be Jane Doe tries to be successful as a mother and a career woman. Okay, so now we're going to see her in action trying to do those things. Or phrased as a question, can Jane Doe be successful as a mother and a career woman? And our answer, right, so that's asked at the beginning. Every scene that we incorporate, she's going after one of those. She's going after the career. Next scene, she's going after being a mom. That's in conflict with going after her career. That's in conflict with being a mom. Scene to scene to scene to scene, right? Super objective is neither. The super objective is not wanting to be a career woman or being a perfect mom. Her super objective is to have a balanced life. Okay? You guys see how those are a little bit different? So our through line, our common thread, our big question is about her wanting to be as successful as a mom and successful as a career woman, but that's not what she's really, truly, deeply after. She's after a balanced life. That's her super objective. So every scene where she's putting everything at risk for her career, she's out of balance. She's actually moving away from her super objective. She doesn't know it. She thinks if I'm the perfect career woman and the perfect mom, I'll be happy. And that's not real. What's real is finding the balance. Okay. That's her true super objective. So the obstacles are trying to be perfect in her career and perfect as a mom based on what others are telling her is success, right? If she says CEO or nothing, I'm a failure, and my kid never has a problem, never gets hurt and goes to Harvard, well, neither one of those is likely to come true. She's never going to be happy, okay? Because she's trying to live up to some expectation that's external as opposed to internal. So if we want to, and her stakes are her happiness, her health, her life, her kid, big stakes here, right? But ultimately, what she's going to realize in my scenario is, oh, I've been going about this all wrong. It isn't achieving CEO. It's achieving a certain level of career success that is acceptable to me, not what other people are telling me, not what other people expect of me, but what I want from my career. And being a perfect mom, it's not about my kid having certain kind of accolades or achieving something. It's that my child is happy and healthy and, well, you know, survives COVID. Like, that's her goals. And so how that culminates then at the end is she finally realizes what her true super objective is, which is, I want a balanced life. I have been going at this the wrong way. I want a balanced life. And to do that, I simply need to let go of all of these external expectations and turn inward. So now we have an example of a rather quiet story that has tremendous obstacles and objectives and very high stakes, but it's not an action-packed run through the forest with a bear chasing me, right? It's a very quiet way to think about the same thing. So in summation, what I hope all of you have taken away, and I'm happy to answer questions if you guys, you've been a quiet out there, you've been a quiet audience. I'm happy to answer questions in response to all this, but what I hope that you're taking away is that understanding the super objective of your protagonist at whatever place you are in your writing process, whether it is your, oh, thank you, Luca, whether it is a first draft or an outline or you're on draft 50 or 150, at whatever point you are, take the time to identify what's driving my character, what's in the way, and what are the stakes. And whatever place you are with your manuscript, it is going to really bump it up to the next level to really dig into those sort of larger, heady concepts. Hey, Sean.
Hi.
How are you?
Better now, I hope.
You're doing great.
Well, I'll just sit here until everybody gets what they want in way of questions. So.
Fantastic. You guys got questions for us? For me? I've baffled you all into just absolute silence.
So, Sean, I hope I get the impression that maybe you didn't know that I was going to bring you back up onto the screen.
I heard the bloop and I knew I was coming up. I thought I was going to be hidden in the corner for a minute. So,
Nope.
good thing I put my shirt back on.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, Elena, this is absolutely spectacular. Two things I want to say to you specifically. One is that I would like to put you in touch with Kiffer Brown and Sharon Anderson of the Chanticleer Authors Conference, because what you just did would be a great session for their
that'd
conference.
Be wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to.
But that's contingent on the fact that quite a while ago, I saw that you and I had 520 mutual friends, and I followed you and sent you a friend request. And most people that I do that to look at me and say, "Oh, you look sane," and then they accept my friend request.
I will look for yours and accept it. I'm really bad at keeping up with vetting them, so I'll track you down and find you and accept you.
You can ask Aaron Mitchell, for example, if I'm worthy.
I'm going to take a risk on you. I am.
I can vouch for him.
Okay, there it is. See, we got the vouch. My computer doesn't 100% work today, but most of the time it does, and most of the time I'm not so shocked by current events that I'm unresponsive.
You know, I think we're all allowed a little bit of a pass. I want to respond. We had a question pop up that I would love to respond to real quick. So Luca asked, what is your process for working with clients? Fantastic. Yeah, Jennifer, we're going to vouch for him, right?
Oh, I do.
So my process for working with clients, basically when someone has a finished manuscript and they feel like they're, don't know what else to do next, but they, know it's not quite ready for query, you'll contact me, and I will make sure everybody's got my contact information. You can contact me, and what we like to do at Allegory is we have the writer send us a sample, first chapter, first 10, 15 pages, something along those lines. We do a sample edit on that material for free. We do the sample edit, and we send that back to the writer so that the writer can see the kind of feedback that we do. And also our fee structure and things like that. We talk about scheduling. So if we realize, we want to work with you, you want to work with us, and we're a good fit, then we would put you into the schedule. We have a couple different levels of manuscript feedback. On the more complex one, I actually go line by line, and I put in questions and comments and offer suggestions. And I do a big editorial letter, and I talk about the structure of the story and the character development and things you haven't thought about, questions about where I got lost. So it's really big picture. It can be very comprehensive. I do some grammatical notations. As I mentioned, I'm not a proofreader, so I'm not perfect, but I know the basics. I also cover all industry formats. So I make sure that your manuscript is formatted correctly for what you want to be using for a query. And I go through that. My turnaround is about 5 weeks. And just so y'all know, I'm currently booked out for a couple of months. So if you are interested in working with me, send me a note now. I'm happy to put you into my schedule. Thank you. I've got a couple compliments, and I want to say thank you for all of you. So if you are interested in working with me, and I'll pop it up right now so you can see it, best way to reach me is this email. And I can't type and speak at the same time. Editing.com. There we go. So Elena at allegoryediting.com, and tell me that we met at this conversation. That would be helpful for me too, because I'll know that we've had some interaction, and I'm happy to put together that sample and show you exactly what we do. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Kiki. Other questions, guys? And Sean, did you have something else you were going to tell me? I may have cut you off.
No, I don't know. You did great, but I do want to note to everybody that I bought the Kindle version of this book so that I could have have a peek at it, and I don't know when I'll be able to finish it because I have brain damage and I can't follow plots. So that's all fun. But I tell you, strong opening here. If you like the whodunit stuff, this is a very promising book. So you should give it a look. And if you buy the hardback, Elena will go to Village Books and sign it for you.
No, actually, I was absolutely going to say that I am more than happy to drop I have little, sticky book plates that I will autograph and I can sign to your name specifically or to a friend if you want to give it as a gift. And I'm happy to drop one of those in the mail to you. So you can get an autographed book if you buy from Village Books. I will, yes, right? Buy independent bookstores. We love Village Books. Just shoot me a note and I will drop one of those into the mail for you. If you want to have an ad for Allegory, we have a page for industry resources. Oh, cool. Jennifer, can you shoot me an email to that Elena@allegoryediting.com? That would be awesome. Oh, you're welcome, Kate. I am in North Bend. Washington. But my first series, some of you may know, is set in Bellingham because it's such a great place to set a murder mystery. Although I had to send my private eye on vacation for book 3 because I kept killing people in Bellingham, and I was like, oh, it's like the Cabot Cove problem. So I sent her on vacation. Yeah, I let her. She found somebody, dead in the mountains, so I could stop killing people. And I killed Sean off in 1 second. I love it. I love it. Funny.
Yeah. And people, ever since then, people have been trying to kill me the same way she did kill me in the book. I guess it looked like an effective approach. So far, I've escaped it. But did I? Oh, good. I'm still here. Something just popped up, and I was afraid it killed me again.
Nope, you're here.
Everybody, remember, December, we'll have our meeting, second Wednesday, 7 p.m. We will do it the way we did it this month, except Claire will do no heavy lifting at all next month. Sean will do the heavy lifting. He will have everything in tippy-top shape, computer-wise, and all that.
Well, I'm happy to pinch hit for you anytime, but I know that this crowd would much rather see your mug than mine. So,
well, let's see your mug, Elena.
This mug?
Yeah,
I'm just trying to keep it together for the dog.
Both of us are trying to keep it together for some creature. And so there it is. So anything else you care to say to this particular crowd, Elena?
No, I think that about sums it up. I am happy to respond to questions. If you think of something later on today, next week, I'm always happy to respond to questions over emails. Y'all probably noticed I love to talk about writing, so perfectly happy to field questions later on. And other than that, I just thank you so much for hosting me, and this has been a blast.
Well,
and I want to remind everybody that it's recorded on here too. So if you want to go back and watch it, if you didn't take notes or if there were some things that you wanted to remind yourself of, you can go back and watch the recorded event, and it is actually going to be on our YouTube channel too. So it's
fantastic. Oh, we just had one more question pop up. Where did I learn to edit this way? A couple of things. I have a PhD in dramatic theory and criticism. So I have an educational background in analyzing text. So that's number one. Number two, I spent 20 years working in theater, and I was a playwright and a director. So I'm used to looking at story structure. If you want to know story structure, read a good play. It really can show you how to move through in a really clear, concise way, because you only have 2 hours on stage, unless you're Tony Kushner, and then you get 4. So I was a theater playwright, and as a director, you really learn to shape, right? You're taking the words of another playwright and you're learning to shape into the strongest story that it can be. And so I have that as a background. I've been a novelist, as we mentioned. My just sent my 5th book off to, knock on wood, my publisher. And so, yeah, exactly. I worked as a dramaturg, which is basically a developmental editor for theater artists. And I've been working in fiction for more than a decade. And so I really have a very well-rounded, yeah, right. I was an auto mechanic before that. So I have all kinds of crazy stuff. But basically, yeah, right. I can fix your car too, especially if it's like from the 1980s, right? It doesn't have an onboard computer. But
Toyota Tercel, you're all over
it. I have fixed. My mother had a Tercel. I have put a clutch in a Tercel. So basically, I just know storytelling inside and out as an actor, as a playwright, as a designer, as a novelist. Then I have the educational background. And then lastly, my master's degree is actually in education. And so I understand how people learn. It's just sort of the perfect storm, right? I can't do any kind of real job, but this I can do.
And you have a horse. That's my
background. And I have 2 horses. I do. I have 2 horses. Yeah. They keep me sane, man. I tell you, they keep me sane. Yep. That's where I do just, like escape from, I forget that there's a pandemic going on when I'm with my horses. Like they're not breathing on me. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm 6 feet away from anybody who walks up because, I'm up in the air. So it's a beautiful thing. Great. Do you find stakes more easily to demonstrate on stage? Oh, what a fantastic question. So Caleb asks, do I find that stakes are more easy to demonstrate on stage through action or dialogue? That is a terrific question. As a playwright, I find it through dialogue. As a director, I find it through action. That would probably be my answer. That it has a lot to do with perspective. I think that really is going to come about based on what kind of story is being told. And also, so, if you're doing a comedy, right? Well, is it a verbal comedy or is it a physical comedy, right? How you're going to manifest is going to change based on the particular genre of the play that you're doing and the actors that you're working with. So I would say that that's going to vary from situation to situation. If you're doing Chekhov, it's all subtext, right? And so it's subtle action, and it's just intensely what's not being said, right? Chekhov is all about what's not being said. Some of his most breathtaking scenes and stunning scenes is what the characters don't say, right? And so, she's got the letter in her pocket. Is she going to give him the letter, not give him the letter? And she's got her hand in her pocket. She takes her hand out, right? And the letter's not there, the key, whichever the play was, right? So it can be very, very, very subtle. But I would say that that's going to be dependent on what role I'm playing. As a director, I'm tending to think more on stage pictures. Obviously, I have a great understanding of character, and so I bring that to the table too as a director. But it's really the actor's job. What are my stakes? That actor's got to get there, and as a director, I might help them, or as a playwright, I might clarify, and I hope that I've given them. But if I really want to find stakes, I've got to think like an actor. So I'm going to say it depends. All right, that's a fantastic question. I'm going to mull over that one a little bit. And they do work hand in hand. You look at something like My Dinner with Andre. There's 2 guys sitting around a table, right? There's no action in that movie, and yet there's stakes there too. So it really is going to depend on the project. But yeah, that's an awesome question.
Nice. Claire, do you have any events you want to mention between now and a month from now?
Well, I got that out of the way at the beginning. There's a great one tomorrow night at Thursday night at 7:00. Yeah, you were. I don't know where you were. You were in the ether.
Lost in cyberspace.
Oh well, so, November 20th there will be a Red Wheelbarrow Writers event, reading from an anthology of pandemic poetry created by mostly Bellingham writers who are in Red Wheelbarrow writers as I am, but I did not write a poem because I know my limits. Didn't want to wreck the book. And but many of the people who read will be reading on the 20th. It's an absolutely gorgeous book, an absolutely haunting bunch of poems, plus just it is really both healing and disturbing, and you should grab that book. It's marvelous, and I will be hosting that event, I hope, in 10 days, as long as the computer works. And so I really hope that I would see you there. Also, open mic has really blossomed under the Zoom or the Crowdcast format. And we had the most brilliant bunch of readings last month. People ages 12 to 103 were read last month, and it's magnificent. Well, it wasn't, probably 80. It was magnificent, and I encourage you to come. I mean, it's starting to fill up to where I can't actually have to turn people away again. But we're just so excited to have the open mic running well, and this poetry event coming up. Just going to be amazing. So, Elena, come back for both of those.
I will. And I realized one other thing I wanted to mention while I have y'all still here, which is that every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, which I think most of us are all local, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. I teach a free online writing workshop. And yeah, right? I'm like, I totally forgot to tell you guys this. So every Wednesday at 9 a.m., you come join me for an hour, and I teach a writing workshop. We cover all kinds of stuff, from craft stuff to queries and the business side. It's a little bit different every week. So if you are interested in that, shoot me an email, and you can find me on Eventbrite. It's through Allegory Editing. You can find us on Eventbrite to sign up, but feel free to shoot me an email if you are interested, and I will tell you how to sign up for free. And it's live cast, and I have a virtual background because we do it over Zoom, so you won't see my ugly wall.
All right, I just popped your email back.
Oh, great!
Thank you. Because it had kind of, wandered up,
vanished in the ether. Posted on the Facebook page. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, and as Jennifer says, you and she are going to talk about getting your services posted.
Yeah, Jennifer, you're going to shoot me an email, right? I would be happy to post on the Facebook page and everything. Yeah, because they're really fun. I have a solid core of writers who show up. Oh, thanks, Jennifer. I have a solid core of writers who show up every week, and it's just sort of nice to, have that as a kind of an anchor for your week, right? For those of us who are working from home and don't have any real schedule anymore, and it's all become a bit surreal. But Wednesday mornings, that's where you can find me Zooming.
That's great that it's right in the middle of the week. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's sort of weekends are so weird now with everybody home, and so Wednesdays at 9 a.m.
Okay. Well,
sorry, I'm not telling you. Shh.
Claire,
I think we're done.
My 12-year-old just wandered into the room, so I was giving her the.
Claire, we are grateful to you for keeping things rolling tonight while I was.
Oh, sure. Of course.
I think I know what happened. I had something running in the background that was causing all kinds of grief.
Wreaking havoc.
So that will not ever happen again. But in the meantime, just want to thank you, Elena, thank you, Claire, thank you, Jennifer, thank you, everybody who's here. Stay safe, especially now that we're back up to 20 cases a day here in Bellingham. Gotta batten down the hatches here, folks.
Yep.
So please be well, and I think this ought to be where we hit that stop button.
All right. Thanks.
And I can't do it.
That'll be me.
Oh, yeah, that'll be you. Thanks, Claire. Bye, everyone.